That was really easy. Okay, so maybe not easy, but it came out. So here we have the gearbox out of the car. It was a lot of work, but it wasn't really that bad, to be honest. It's a pretty easy car to work on, but doing stuff like this is not ideal on my kind of lift because it's a lot of crouching down. And also I don't have a jack for the transmission, so it was a bit fiddly. I'm going to take off the exhaust before I refit it because that almost made it impossible to get it out. So it's going to be just as hard to get it in. And this is not something you want to struggle with too much. Even though it's aluminum casing, it is still quite heavy because there are some gears in there, I hope. I'm having an issue with this gearbox, and it's been a problem ever since I got the Lada Niva back on the road. All the gears are working. And yeah, they are really all working, but fourth gear will jump out if I release the throttle. I can keep the car in gear by holding my hand on the gear stick to avoid it getting jumped out of gear. But the gear itself is working just fine. But holding that gear in place with your hand is not a good idea. It could damage the internals and the synchro rings and so on, at least in theory. So I would really like to fix that. Another thing is this got a 5-speed gearbox in it. That is known to be weak. According to some, you shouldn't go under 80 kilometers per hour in 5th gear. I haven't been that worried. If it breaks, then I will just have to fix it. What I have been doing is driving in 5th gear at a bit higher speed, maybe 60, maybe 70, and never apply a lot of throttle in the lower speeds to avoid putting too much torque on the system. If that makes sense, I don't know, but that's the way I have been doing it. Other than that, I have just been using the 3rd gear and rev it quite high and then jump to 5th gear. That will work just fine. But driving in cities, it's a bit of a struggle because I can't really use the 5th gear when I'm going 50 kilometers per hour. And the 3rd gear is giving it quite a lot of revs, and people notice the car already. I don't really need the sound also. So it would be so nice to have the 4th gear just working, and also it's fun to try to fix stuff like this. So in this video, I'm going to try to fix that. And apparently it should be caused, or normally it's caused by a broken thrust washer. That will sometimes damage the rest of the gearbox, so maybe I'm too late. We'll see. I don't know. But it's apparently a thrust washer between the bell housing and the gearbox. So I think I can just take the bell housing off, investigate that ring, and if it's broken, then I'm pretty much sure that's the problem. Then I'm going to change it, put it all back together. I'm not really going to open up the gearbox if I don't have to. And also, some might wonder why I'm not going to change the clutch and the release bearing while I'm in here, because that's common knowledge. That's a clever thing to do when you have everything apart, because it is a lot of work to do. I'm not going to do that because I don't really like the idea of changing stuff because it's easy. I like to change stuff because they are broken. Sometimes I stray from that philosophy, but on this one I'm going to follow that. One thing is to keep costs down a little bit. I have a lot of projects, but the main thing is I'm not going to fix what's not broken. I'm just going to investigate the clutch plate, because if it's completely worn down to the rivets, of course I'm going to change it. But I don't think it is. I think it's just fine. But the first thing I'm going to do is to take this outside and give it a wash with the jet washer. That could force some water into the gearbox, so I am of course going to drain the oil afterwards and clean that up. But just to make it a bit nicer to work on and avoid getting crap into the gearbox if I have to open it, I'm just going to wash it. So with the gearbox now slightly cleaner, no, it's not completely clean, but it's cleaned around the areas where I might have some problems getting crud and crap into the gearbox, because I need to take this one off when I reassemble it. And I also would like to drain it for oil and maybe even take the bottom end of the pan off. And the main thing we're going to do now is to remove all the nuts going around this. And then hopefully I can find a broken thrust washer in here. I really hope that's the case. And I also hope that it looks like this, because this is the one I bought. And according to my research about this problem, it's this one that I need to change. It could be wrong. I hope not, because remember, the Lada Niva is my daily driver at the moment. And I cannot really have it hanging on the lift for longer than necessary, at least, because I need it to go places. Yeah, of course I have a lot of mopeds, but still. There we go. The drain plug is not looking too bad, so I'm actually pretty optimistic about the internals of this gearbox. There's a bit of metal in the oil, but that's normal. As you can see, a bit starry. But I don't think that's an issue at all. It's very, very thick oil, though. But just gonna remove this bearing. I'm gonna clean that up and re-grease it. I think it's just fine. So I should be able to just separate the two halves now and get access to that thrust washer. And as you can see, one turned into two. I have a 4-speed gearbox, and I have just taken that apart because I need some parts, and I'm going to show you why. That was a really lucky thing that I remember that I had the other one. But one thing I noticed straight away when taking the bell housing off this is there's no liquid gasket on the 4-speed. This is the one that is not from the car. As you can see, there is a paper gasket. On the 5-speed on mine, though, there are no paper gasket, but there's liquid sealant everywhere. So this one has been off at one point, that's for sure. I'm not sure that this one has been off. If it has been off, it's been done right, so to speak, because they used the right gasket and so on. There's nothing wrong with using the liquid gasket, in my opinion, but it just tells me that someone has been in there. That led me to take a better look at stuff. One thing that was weird, the thrust washer on the broken gearbox, the 5-speed, is pointing this way. On the 4-speed, it's pointing the other way. I suspect this is the right way, because I don't think it has been apart. But in reality, I don't really think it matters which way it points, but it's because it's just going to be squashed between those two parts and be a thrust washer. But then I noticed this. If you take a look at the area that the thrust washer is pushed against, you will see that it actually grooves down in the sides. Also this one, but let's just look at the side ones. It's just sort of pointing downwards back here. That corresponds to the washer ring if it was flipped like this, because then it will fit down like this. But it wasn't fitted like this. Remember, it was fitted like this. So that's like this. Now let's go to my theory. There was cut this groove down in the material. That's the first problem. Then someone had the problem that I'm having at the moment, took it apart and flipped the thrust washer because it wasn't broken, and it has just dug itself into the material, therefore not being big enough to actually take that slack the thrust washer is supposed to do. So they just flipped it, and I actually think that would have worked. But that has also made a groove into the material. The good thing is that I have another bell housing. I think it's exactly the same for the 4 and the 5-speed. I haven't checked, but I think it is. As you can see in this one, it's super smooth. There's no problem on that. I could take this out maybe and fit it on the other one, but I would risk of damaging it. So I just think if it fits, I'm just going to fit this bell housing on the 5-speed gearbox with a new thrust washer, of course. But why has this happened? This must have been spinning and dug into that material. I don't really know why. Maybe a misaligned clutch or something had put a lot of pressure on the input shaft. This one is turning as it is supposed to in the bearing. Everything seems fine there. The outside of the bearing is of course not supposed to spin, but it can spin if I pull it out a little bit. But it's exactly the same on the other one, so I don't think that's a problem either. But I don't think anything is really wrong with the gearbox, so I'm just going to try to fit the other bell housing with a new thrust washer and fit it all back together, and then I think it will work. If the problem comes back, then I know something more sinister is wrong inside that gearbox, but I don't think so. I'm going to try it anyway. But I'm going to clean up the surface, apply a bit of liquid sealant, and use the paper gasket because it's just fine. I don't think it's an issue that this one didn't have a paper gasket, but in theory it will be clamped together tighter. Could that maybe has been part of the problem? No, I don't think so, but it could be. I just checked the codes written on the bell housing, and they match. The numbers in here, they match. So this one should fit the 5-speed just as good as the other one, I'm pretty sure of. But then again, it looks exactly the same. We have the same numbers, but in here it looks like this. On the old one, there's actually a shaft coming out that the input shaft comes through. Oh no! Everything was going pretty smoothly, maybe a bit too smooth. I found the issue, but I cannot fix it today because this is the issue, and this got this piece of tube on it. The other bell housing has the same part in here without any wear, but without any tube in it. I thought that maybe it didn't really matter, but then I looked at all the parts and remembered that the release bearing is supposed to sit on this pipe. And I cannot seem to get it out in any way. So I think I will have to order a new one of these. And I could risk having to wait a bit for that because I cannot get it locally. The good thing about this is I'm gonna release this video. I'm gonna show you the progress so far, and then order the parts and wait for those. And maybe I have overlooked something, so the comments are going to be golden for me. Yes, I know some of you might say it would be a good idea to rebuild this and that and all that, but remember, it's not the point of this car. I just want to make it work without breaking the bank and fixing more than I need to do. So a shame with this one, and maybe it's time for new clutch plate as well. It's not completely gone, but it's close. So I'm not going to change anything else than just this, but it is pretty worn. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next one.